everyone. I want to talk to you today about the reinvention of our society. Yes, I'm talking about the complete overhaul of the energy systems that power our civilization. So, I want you to imagine it's the year 2050. Imagine you've been invited to the party to witness while we literally blow out the pilot light of the fossil fuel era. We've just moved on. We will have moved on to cleaner and safer energy sources by then. Yes, we'll still use some oil and gas, but for the most part, we'll be leaving hydrocarbons in the ground where they belong. Okay, come back with me here to today. Today in Canada, we're at a crossroads. Are we going to go down that path to the future and embrace that clean energy vision? Or are we going to resist that change? And that's really where we are today. So today I want to talk to you about three things. I want to talk about why we need to go down that path. I want to talk about why it's exciting, what it's going to look like when we get there, and I want to talk about how to get there. So, why? Well, we've just heard some about the drivers, the global drivers of change, and I put them in 5 categories. The first is energy demand. This year, the 7 billionth baby is going to be born on the planet. That's right, there's going to be 7 billion people needing the services from energy. That's the service of light, that's the service of mobility, that's the service of home comfort. And those numbers are rising. So there's increasing energy demand. The second is energy security. Governments don't want to depend on foreign supplies of petroleum products to power their societies. Who wants to depend on someone else for your energy source? And the United States is acutely aware of that. They just spent $725 billion to protect their access to oil in Iraq. $725 billion. So energy security, governments' desires to control energy themselves, is the second driver. The third driver is environmental risk. Every time we take oil and gas out of the ground, we move it to where we need it, and then we burn it. We impact air, land, and water. And burning those fossil fuels is the major driver of climate change. And we've seen evidence of this, for instance, last year in the Gulf. We saw it when the BP disaster happened. Here in Canada, in northern Alberta, we see the oil sands, or the tar sands. And we see the impacts of climate change all over the world. Some people are denying there's climate change, but actually scientists are measuring. They're measuring climate change in the Arctic and places like that annually. So the drive to reduce the environmental risks from energy is a third driver. The fourth is inequity. There's actually millions of people around the world that don't even have access to electric light. They are stuck in poverty. It's hard to improve your standard of living if you don't have access to basics like electric light. And so the drive to stop energy poverty and inequity is another driver. And finally, there's competitiveness. And in my mind, this is the most critical driver for Canada if we want to prosper in a few decades from now. And why is because countries are investing right now into that clean energy future. So do we in Canada want to be buying energy technology and services from other countries 3 decades from now because we chose to ignore that this energy revolution was happening? Right now, when I say the train's left the station, it's because since 2007, $2 trillion has been invested in the green energy future. Last month, I just heard that the first wind energy billionaire was minted in China. That's right, you don't have to be an oil executive to be in the billionaire club now. You can be a clean energy exec. And what did Obama say last month in the State of the Nation address? He said he wants to invest in the Apollo projects of the clean energy future. History is littered with fools who failed to adapt. Losers who failed to adapt to a changing reality. You know, I don't think we want to be part of that club. So, what does this future look like? Let's take a walk down a street in 2050. It's not going to actually look that different from today, even though we're reinventing society. If you look up here, you're going to see a new housing complex. That housing complex is going to produce as much energy as the people inside it are using. How does it do that? It does it through effective design. It does it through passive solar, and it does it through panels on the roof. And behind that housing complex, there'll be a little power plant. It's called the district energy system, and it produces the heat and power for the neighborhood. And there'll be hundreds of these district energy systems in a city. Will they have big smokestacks? No, they'll only produce steam. So this kind of futuristic world, the reality is it already exists today. In Austria, those kind of housing complexes, zero carbon housing complexes exist. Those kind of district energy power plants. In fact, we have one down in the former Olympic Village. It actually takes the heat off of the sewer line and it uses it to pump it into the houses to heat them. So these kind of futuristic technologies are actually in place on board around the planet today. So in that futuristic world, what about transportation? You've got to go to a business meeting. You're going to hop on a fast electric train. It's going to go from, say, Toronto to Quebec City, 2.5 hours, door to door, office to office. You won't even have to go through that airport security anymore. And what about cars? People like me are addicted to personal mobility. Yep, there'll be cars in the future, and there'll be electric cars. You'll drive your electric car. You'll go into the station. They actually will have places where you swap your battery out. You sit there, a robot will take out your used up battery, replace it with a fully charged one in less than 60 seconds. You don't even have to get out of your car. Now this sounds pretty futuristic, doesn't it? But actually, in Tokyo today, those robots are doing that, swapping out those batteries and putting them back in. And electric cars, China just committed to put 1 million electric cars a year on the road. A year. Those kind of power stations, next year, 2 countries, Israel and Denmark, are going to have networks of those stations where you can swap out your electric batteries. So you'll be able to drive around the country in your electric vehicle next year. What other kind of change is going to happen? I think one of the biggest changes is going to happen right up here. We're going to change our attitudes and our behaviors. No longer are we just going to expect energy to be abundant and cheap like it is today. And that's going to be a big change. So what I'm talking about is really, it's a complete overhaul of our energy system. It is a huge project. It's like building the transcontinental railway. That took 4 years. What I'm talking about is going to take about 4 decades. But I think we can do it. It's true, there's going to be people who are saying that this vision is naive, that it's unachievable, that Canada is too cold, that Canada is too big of a country, and that it's too expensive. Those are some of the arguments. But I think I've just demonstrated to you that not only is it doable, but it's being done as we sit here. It's being done already. Too costly? What's it going to cost us to get on this bandwagon a decade or 2 from now? And what are the costs of climate change? So I don't think it's any of those things. This is doable, and it's doable now. What about the petroleum companies? Where are they going to be? They're going to be with us, but they'll sell some oil. Predominantly, what they're going to be selling are energy services. You see, we don't need oil and gas. What we need are the services of mobility, light, home comfort. And those companies are going to have transformed to be providing those services to us. Now, I know that some people are thinking, right, but there's a lot of money to be made in oil right now. It's topped $100 a barrel again. And so it's like asking miners during a gold rush, hey, stop mining gold. There's this other thing called silicone. In the future, it's going to be really valuable. Head over there. So I would agree with you. I don't think that those oil companies are going to be leading the charge on this. But I do think it's critical that they do become part of this transformation. They are a key and critical part of the transformation to this new energy society. So if they're not going to be the leaders, who are going to be the leaders? And how are we going to get there? So I think there's 3 things that we can do to get us down that path. The first is we need a roadmap from here to 2050. We need a roadmap that tells us how to get to that low carbon future. Right now, We've got one group who puts out their science or their economics saying, here's the analysis. And a few weeks later, we'll have another group putting out their science and their economics, and it'll be completely opposite. And this dueling science that's going on right now is really keeping us stuck. It's keeping us stuck in the status quo. And so I think we need to come together, and we need to commission the best and the brightest minds, and we need to say, create the options. What are the scenarios? How do we get from here to there? What are the costs? What are the opportunities? And what are the costs of not acting? And from that, let's make a plan, a roadmap to 2050. So once we've got a plan, what do we need next? We need power. And one way that we can create power is by coming together, getting diverse alliances of people to come together. I'm talking about the green building geeks coming together with the loggers, coming together with the mutual fund managers, the CEOs, rabbis, teachers, nurses, everybody coming together. A unified group, a diverse group, an alliance with one vision. And it doesn't matter what motivates you to get into that tent. Some people are going to be motivated because there's a lot of money to be made, and there is. Some people are going to be motivated because this is going to advance the cause of human rights, and it will. And some people are going to be motivated, like me, by climate change. That's what really makes me passionate about this. You know, I spent about a decade working to protect forests in coastal British Columbia. And after we secured a pretty great conservation victory out there, I had some time. And I looked, and there was this huge pile of books that had stacked up in the corner of my office about climate change and adaptation and all those maps and analysis. And I dug into those books and started reading them. And I realized that all the work that my colleagues and my friends were doing to protect biodiversity was really going to be for naught. It really wasn't loggers and logging companies that were going to kill the bears and the salmon. It was carbon dioxide and the changing ecosystems that climate change is going to bring. And that's what makes me passionate about this. But it doesn't matter what makes you passionate and brings you into the tent. The point is we need to come together. And I think often when groups come together, diverse groups who actually don't agree on everything, but they may agree on the vision of the new energy future, they can get caught in the small stuff and start fighting with each other. And I think that is what disempowers us. That is what keeps us unable to change the status quo. So coming together, diverse alliances of people, is the second thing, because that does create social and political power. But the third thing, I think even that's not enough. I think we need to get out there and engage Canadians, engage the public, and get the citizens speaking to government and demanding what we want. We want action today, real action today, to get us to that vision of tomorrow. So my dream is that Canada becomes leaders and goes down this clean energy path, goes down to the vision of the new energy future. And I think we as Canadians sitting here, we are some of the wealthiest people in the world. We have peace, we have democracy, we have education. Really, the only thing holding us back is the comfort of the status quo. And so my challenge to you, my challenge is to get engaged. Get engaged to make this energy future real. Do it for your country. Do it for your kids. Do it because it's the right thing to do. Thanks.